And welcome to another Highlight Mastermind interview. I am so excited for today's guest. If you're brand new to this, my name is Hanneke and I help women to grow businesses through hardcore business advice, strategies, mindset, and a whole lot more in my Savvy Success Business Masterminds and also through private coaching. So today we are speaking to Andrea Isabel Lucas, the owner of Bar and Soul Yoga, but she's got so much going on that I am going to just throw it to her to really introduce herself to us in full fledged.
Hi, Hanneke. Thank you so much for having me. So a little bit about the business that I run now today. I have a bar and yoga business with 5 studio locations. I offer bar teacher training, yoga teacher training. I'm in the process of launching the first ever online bar certification that is in the authentic Lottie Burke tradition. And I also have a clothing line that I just launched last year and a book that I wrote last year that is hopefully coming out this year. So that's what I'm up to at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and so much. And I have to tell everyone who's listening, I have got such a big crush on Andrea because her and I met each other in the Pilates world. And I think how you got on my radar is we were Lululemon ambassadors at a similar time. And ever since, I've just watched this girl explode all over Boston and now all over the internet. So I'm so excited for what she can teach us today about running a business. And so the first thing I wanted to ask her, which is something that I know many entrepreneurs or people who are in the beginning phases of wanting to start a business struggle with, is like, when do I take the leap of faith and how do I take the leap of faith? So Andrea, if you can help us with that.
The biggest piece of advice that I can give you is it's the same thing that I say, like when I lead teacher trainings and I'm walking them through like my business of yoga or business of bar or whatever workshop. I actually whip out my resume and show them a 10-year arc from like first ever training to like teaching my first ever class to where I am now. And there was a lot of really small kind of unglamorous steps in between those points. And my biggest piece of advice that I like to give is just at any given time, you have to take the biggest risk that I always say, like, that you can stomach at the moment. And like the risks that I took in the beginning of my career with, I started out as a manager for a very prestigious, wonderful spa, Exhale. It was my dream job. And when it wasn't anymore, I was so confused because I couldn't figure out what was going on with that. And it was actually a result of some wonderful coaching that I got, that I discovered I was an entrepreneur, which I wasn't really ready for that information at the time. So I thought entrepreneurs were people whose parents were rich and had set up trust funds for them, basically. And I wasn't one of those people.
I think that's the first. Oh, I love that.
So really, when the coach said to me, it's not unusual that you would enjoy starting something new and then you get bored because your personality profile, she had me do like a similar to like a Myers-Briggs. And she was like, wow, you rank really high for an entrepreneur personality type. You're going to want to start projects and hand them off so that you can go start another project. And at the time, like my mind was blown because it never occurred to me that you could plan for that. You could have your career set up so that that would be an asset and not like a fault. Like I thought it was like a character flaw, until she showed me that. So anyway, that was kind of the long answer, but the short answer is when I discovered my entrepreneurial side, the first step for me was to quit my management job and go into being a solo teacher and having a more entrepreneurial approach to being a fitness and yoga instructor at the time. That was a huge leap of faith for me at the time. It was the biggest thing that I could stand that didn't make me like totally want to come out of my skin. And, after that, it was like pitching my services to another location and running my own business out of their location. And then it was, training some people and having them work under me. And then it was eventually signing a lease. That was like the most terrifying thing in the world, the idea of like having my own brick and mortar space. So it was many steps until I got to that point. So that is my biggest advice, is like, you don't have to take multi-$100,000 business loan out today to start your business. All you have to do is do one thing. Maybe it's saying on social media, I'm starting a side hustle. Maybe it's just saying out loud to the people closest to you, I'm not inspired at what I'm doing anymore. And like, I really want, even just saying, I really want my own business, or I dream of having my own store or studio or consulting agency or whatever the case may be. Like, just speaking those words aloud are so powerful. So when the biggest step that you can even think about taking sometimes is just saying something out loud to another person. Perfect. Just do that for now. I mean, I say just, but that can be a really brave step.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you just touched upon that, because I think some people will get all tripped up on themselves and going, what's wrong with me that I'm constantly getting bored at the next thing that I'm doing? And I'm so glad you just said that, because that's normally an indication that, yes, you've got that entrepreneurial itch and you should follow it and follow your heart, because eventually, like, you will fall on your feet and you will find your groove and you'll create something amazing, and and you'll be so happy that you did it. So
Absolutely.
thank you for that. All
Absolutely.
right. So now, just going into, because as I mentioned earlier, Andrea has got a lot of stuff going on. And so I wanted her to tell us a little bit more about what's coming. Like, she's got this first ever online bar teacher training. So my first question to you is like, how did you even think about that? Why were you like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do? What was the thought process?
Well, it's interesting because I started teaching bar kind of before it was on the radar and before it had gone mainstream. This was around 2007. I would say it went mainstream around 2013 is when it really like blew up. So I was trained to a very high standard. It was kind of a very niche thing. You had to go to certain studios that had it, and it was this tradition that had been started by Lottie Burke in 1959 is when she developed the first class. So it had been kind of closely guarded. It was all very like, you had to be invited. It was kind of snobby, to be honest. Like, there was kind of this air of like mystique about the whole thing. And interestingly, I was a women's studies major. I had, gone through a horrible divorce when I discovered bar. So I thought it would be like a side hustle. And then I had like an epiphany one day when I was taking class where I was like, wow, I wanted to be a women's studies professor. I wanted to go get my PhD. And I just said one day, God, I wonder if this could be my career. Like, there's all these women here. I have this opportunity to make a positive impact on them. I could bring like this message about empowerment and going after your dreams and really like going after what you want in life. And like, seems like this is as good a place as any to share that. Here we are forming a community. Like, what if we really baked that into the culture? That was kind of my first inkling of kind of going down that career path. And fast forward, I ended up with a wonderful management job for a wonderful company called Exhale. Absolute dream job, dream company. My mentors there had managed the Lottie Burke method in New York City for decades. They were just like the absolute best, gold standard. And as I mentioned, it was fun because I got to open a new location for them. So of course that spoke to me, right? And then after about a year and a half, I was already getting bored with it, and through no fault of theirs. And of course I totally thought it was my fault, and I was like some kind of a quitter or something until I had that awesome coaching session. But anyway, I ended up realizing like, okay, bar is having a moment right now. It's starting to get on people's radar. Lucky for me, I've already got years under my belt and have trained with the best. And I was actually a teacher trainer and a mentor for them, for their new hires. So I had a head start at when bar was really just starting to blow up. So I started Bar and Soul. And in the beginning, as I mentioned to you, I had no money to go out and like, I couldn't even fathom signing a commercial lease and like putting myself at such a high risk. So like the biggest risk I could take at that time was going to other studios and saying, I'd like to start my bar program. It's called Bar and Soul at your studio. If it takes off, I'd like to be able to subcontract other teachers, who would work for me. I would train them, and then I would like deliver this program here at your studio. It was no risk. There was really no overhead other than like setting up my LLC, getting a logo designed, And that's how I got started. And so I've been offering my live teacher trainings. The original question was about bar training. I am still
That's
coming back.
okay. I totally like this. I like that, like you
Okay.
give so many good little nuggets of, like nobody starts. I think we all look at at the people that we admire most and what, like say the Marie Forleos of the world,
Yeah.
right? And you look at them and you're like, my goodness, my stuff can't look like that right now. And the great thing is like, that's not where anybody starts. Like
No.
you gotta like it. So I love that you're giving us the entire background of exactly how the little jumps and leaps of faith.
Yes.
Yeah, it's absolutely so important.
So I've had the live trainings for several years since I started Bar and Soul, which was in 2013, and I also offer yoga teacher trainings, which is a very different world because yoga has this established organization, the Yoga Alliance, that everybody's heard of, and when you have their seal of approval, people know that means something. That doesn't really exist in the bar world because, as I mentioned, it only recently went mainstream. It was very closely guarded before that. And it was always like by invite only. There wasn't a lot of cooperation among studios. So as a result of that, since it's gone mainstream, there's been a lot of like what I call fake bar trainings that have just cropped up everywhere, where just pretty much anyone can say, here, I'll certify you in my bar technique. Here is a certificate, like you're certified. However, sometimes it's just a weekend or even as few as like 4 hours or 6 hours where maybe you're just learning a script, or maybe you're learning something that's fun and it's cool and it's like dance based, has nothing to do with the Lottie Burke tradition. So over the last year, I've gone to England twice to study with the daughter of Lottie Burke, this woman named Esther Fairfax, who's 83 and has been teaching for over 50 years. So having really mentored and studied with, I consider just the best mentors in the world, from Exhale to studying with Esther, and seeing all these like trainings that just kind of make me cringe in the industry, I just realized that I didn't feel like I was reaching enough people just here in Boston with my live trainings. And I would have people reach out to me and be like, I live in Norway, or even like, I live in Maryland and I really want your training. Yours looks like the most authentic and like comprehensive. So that just got me thinking, if I really want to reach as many people with the authentic method as possible, I'm going to have to get online. So that's where we're at with that. We're building that now.
And I'm so happy that you just brought that up too. Like, so as you can hear, Andrea is the real deal. Andrea has invested a lot in her training herself to like really become an expert at what she does. And if you are thinking of starting your own business, then make sure that you can get the credentials that is available for you at that time. Again, she didn't start there. She started at Exhale and she got some training and stuff under her belt. And I remember the day, actually, Andrea, when you were at Equinox and you were like, I'm quitting and I've just gotten my own certification program. And I was like, oh my word, you're so amazing. So I remember that day. So even that you can do in levels if you wanted to start your business, but always when you are going into something, see what that gold standard is and whether you can get there and how you can get there. And if you are researching for other certifications to do, make sure that you are getting certified through the people that are the real deal as well. Like make sure that you really go for someone who knows what they're talking about. So I'm great that, I'm glad that you brought up that whole thing about, just being, what is the word that I'm looking for? Not the real deal, but like the gold standard is what I'm going to call it. Like, just make sure that you get the base certification or the base that you can do in that moment and study with those people. Go to the best in your industry and get their information.
Totally.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Okay. So now you got this book coming out as well. Tell us about this book.
Yes. And I wanted to tell you that if any of your followers are interested in the bar certification, they can check that out at barguild.com. It's BARRE Guild, GUILD.com. And then the book you can find over on my personal website, AndreaIsabel.com. It's not published yet. However, it is, I am sending out like little sneak peek excerpts every month to those that are interested.
Exciting.
And I am in negotiations, hopefully, for a publishing contract for this year-ish, hopefully. So wish me luck with that. But the book is called Own It All. I wrote it last year, and I'm really excited about it because, as I mentioned to you, I was a women's studies major. Like my why, like what gets me out of bed in the morning is like equality and like seeing women be empowered and having people stop living lives where they're doing what they think they're supposed to be doing and actually admitting like what they really most want in life and saying it out loud and just having the courage to go after it. Like that, nothing is more exciting to me.
Goosebumps. Love it. Goosebumps.
And I always say like, yeah, I own bar studios, but like, I mean, I love bar. I know that it works. I love having this community of women. I love yoga and everything that all stands for, of course. And really my why is like to inspire women to create empowering and supportive communities and to have this culture that like is this, creating this ripple effect in the lives of the people who are part of it. So the book is kind of an extension of that, but it's allowing me to go more in depth with some of first of all, my story and things that I've been through. I mean, I was a teenage mom. I had my son when I was 19 years old. I was even a runaway when I was a teenager. I used to sleep in those dumpsters that you donate clothing into. I got out of an abusive relationship. Like I've been through a lot, and I want to really have people know that you can be successful. You can crush whatever goals you're after, no matter what you're starting from. Like whatever stories you have made up about yourself based on your past, like you don't have to believe those stories. You can make up a different story, and you are in the driver's seat though. Like, I saw this quote that helped really for me to start my business. And it's by a street artist named Eddie Kala. And it said, if you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission. That was huge for me because I realized that I knew I did want to have my own business actually. And I knew I wanted studios. And I think I was literally like waiting for someone to like tap me on the shoulder and be like, oh, you're up. It's your turn now.
Yeah.
And that was never coming. Like I had to do that for myself.
No, nobody was ever going to give you permission. I'm love all these little nuggets that you're throwing out, and I want to highlight that. So nobody was ever going to give you permission. And as a coach, I just love what you just said. It's like that story that we make up about ourselves, about what we can and can't do. And even in the beginning, where you're like, yeah, entrepreneurs are people with trust funds, right? We have these perceptions about what we are and are not allowed to do. But I think this is such a great time to be a woman, and I am so glad that we have people like yourself, and we have a bunch of really awesome women out there now, really just giving us all permission and showing us that we have to step up and own it. Because it's actually so funny, that's part of what my why is. I'm like, this is our time. Nobody is going to tap you on the shoulder. Nobody is going to tell you it's okay. And if you want to like get after it like guys do, then you have to step up. It's up to us. Nobody's going to give it to us. So I love that.
Totally. Yeah. So that's the gist of the book. Own It All is really about just taking like radical personal responsibility for your life and eliminating all the excuses, not waiting to be chosen or to be like rescued or or for like approval from somebody else or anything like that, but just really, so it breaks down chapter by chapter different ways that you can start to own it, like owning your time, owning your communications, owning your style, owning your career. So that's the book. And you can get a little excerpt every month if you get on the newsletter.
I can't wait to lay my hands on that book, because just knowing Andrea has got a really amazing way of writing that is very interesting. And I'm sure like everybody who reads that book is just going to get so much out of that book. Which brings me to the next thing here. Like we've now bounced around in all the different projects that you're busy with, and we haven't even touched the clothing, the online clothing line that you just started. So can you tell us a little bit what that process was like? And again, what made you decide, oh yes, let me get in there too?
Oh yes, definitely. And I think you're going to like this because it kind of ties back to something we've talked about before, which is like doing things you don't know how to do and finding people that do know how to do those things.
Yes. Tip number one in owning a business, go find someone who knows how to do it.
Exactly. So I remember when I was at I was opening my 5th studio 3 months after having opened my 4th studio, and I was interviewing the manager, and we were in negotiations for her salary, and I was beginning to ask myself like, I wonder if I need a full-time marketing person. I wonder if I need an HR consultant. I wonder, like, do I need a regional manager? Like, I just realized I was at a point in my business where I wasn't exactly sure how to scale to the next level. And yet it was happening. And that's one big thing that I've had to learn, is just to trust myself to figure out what I'm going to do at each turn in the road. Like, I know now that even if I don't know what to do, I will find somebody that does. And that's my other big piece of advice, is like, first one is taking the biggest risk that you can stand today. And the second one is trust yourself. Like, if you can't figure it out, just find someone who can. There's always someone who knows. You might have to pay them. They might be willing to share with you for free, but you might have to hire them for an hour of their consulting time, or you may, or whatever, depending on how big the project is. But there's always someone out there who knows, if you're willing to admit that you need help and reach out and ask for it. So there I was, opening the fit studio, kind of not sure if I was doing this thing right or whatever. And I thought, I had a long drive, and I thought, I'm going to listen to Girl Boss again, Sophia Amoruso's book, because I had listened to it before, and on Audible or whatever. And I knew there was a part that I had really liked, where she talked about scaling from like her being the only person in the business to like hiring a full staff and getting a CEO and all these things. So I was like, I got to review what she did at that point, see if there's any nuggets in that. And sure enough, she tells you in the book that she hired a consultant, and his name was Dana Freed, and she raves about him. And I thought, I'm going to look him up. I'm just going to like see if he's still around or whatever. And I looked him up, and I mean, we were on the phone like within 24 hours of me sending an email and reaching out to him. He's the one most crazy, quick responding people actually I've ever met. It's a little bit scary.
And you're like, oh, you just sitting around waiting for us? What's happening?
Yeah, it's like he got this bat signal before I even sent the email. But so we started working together, and in fact, he did help me figure out how to scale my business. He got me putting a lot of like processes in place and just systems in place that I didn't have before. He got me forecasting. I mean, I was already, at least, thank God, I had a bookkeeper. I was doing bookkeeping, and I was, paying my taxes and everything, but I was never forecasting like for the next month or the next year or anything like that. I would just every month look at my bank balance and be like, I don't know, it seems like we are doing great or we're not doing great. And he really taught me how, like, well, you can predict, like, you've had your business for a few years now, you can predict how January is going to go, how February is going to go, and why don't we do a spreadsheet for the whole next year and do all of this. So, I mean, he just helped me do some really common sense things that I, wouldn't have thought to do on my own, that were so helpful. And over time, he would kind of look at my my budget spreadsheet and say, like, you're not selling very much clothing, but you sell some, but not really. And, that seems like a big opportunity. And he's normally consults with basically fashion businesses like Nasty Gal and some other amazing, actually some really successful ones, and similarly huge like Nasty Gal. And so anyway, he would always mention to me about clothing, and I would say, well, should I carry a few more brands? And he'd say, well, you can get a lot bigger markup if you just make your own. So I thought, I literally have never even like worked at a store in the mall. Like, I don't know anything about like the fashion world or like retail.
If you're going to buy the book, she did not work in retail.
Exactly. And so anyway, I mean, the thing is, Dana, that's what he does for a living. He's totally plugged in. He has this whole little ecosystem. So before I knew it, I was connected with this wonderful woman, Megan, who was the head designer at Nasty Gal. Previously, a factory out of LA that will do small batches. Everything was, locally sourced. Like, before I knew it, I had like packages coming to my house with like different like lycra fabrics for me to test out. And I would just make a Pinterest board and be like, I'm kind of loving the idea of this, but kind of mixed with that. And she would just do the sketches. And so, I mean, it just goes back to that point that like, you can literally do anything, even if it's, not something that's already in your wheelhouse. Like, if you're willing to ask for help, hire good help, and just really respecting other people's expertise, I think, is huge.
Absolutely. And I just like, ooh, there we go. Sorry, guys. So what I like there is like the fact that you just said like really trusting yourself, because I think that's where a lot of us get all tripped up, is trusting your gut, go with what you think is the best decision in this moment, and then hiring the people, go to the best people that you can pay in the moment.
Yes.
And that will really help you. And everything, as like to use a Marie Forleo quote, everything else is a figure outable. The other thing
Totally.
that I really like that you just said there, which I think is so important, if you can start doing this from day one in your business, you will get so much data, is tracking your income every single month. It has really helped me. I know in my business, like I track every single day, basically what's coming in. But then now I have an overview of what's going on every month. So I can compare like, okay, so last year this was a slow month. How can I drum up more business this month? Or it's a slow month. It's okay. It's not unusual for it to be slow, you know?
Totally.
So definitely from day one, start tracking what you're doing. So that was so great. Now, you run so many things. And what I admire about you is the fact that you've really, I like using the phrase, put your girl panties on, right? I'm sorry, your CEO panties on. Hopefully you have your girl panties on, but your CEO panties on, right? Like you've really just stepped up into that role and you are the CEO of your business. And I want to ask you, like, how did you step into that role? Like what helped you to let go of that, like, oh, I'm just going to be this instructor that just coaches one-on-one, to really going big in your business? Like
I
how
think
did
it's
you
all,
do that mindset shift?
I mean, I really think it's all personal preference, because some people will want to do that one-on-one work and they don't want to manage a team. And I do respect that. And I also just remembered, I want to tell you about the Bar and Soul collection. You can check it out at barsoul.com/shop.
We will put everything that we're saying will be in the show notes. Girl Boss, the book, Andrea's book, her clothing line, where you can go and take a Bar and Soul class or get this online training. It will all be in the show notes. If anybody missed something, don't worry, we're going to get it.
Thanks.
Back to
mindset. Yes.
Mindset shift.
So I do think that it is really, like, for example, I know I say this to like recent yoga training graduates when they say to me, well, what about, how do I build up my group classes, or how do I build up my private clientele? And I say, like, you've got to get out there and teach and see what you like teaching. Do you like teaching private clients? Do you like doing group? I know I find teaching one-on-one really draining. It's just not my thing. I love teaching a group class, whereas like other people feel the complete opposite way. And again, it goes to that personality assessment that I did for that first coach, which is just like, know yourself and know what you are into and what you enjoy. And kind of like just knowing your own style is so much half the battle, and rather than trying to like fix or change yourself to be a different way. So I want to say that. But one thing that I found when I was doing my management job, which also included teaching full time, is that it was boring for me to teach at just one place. Because having been like you, teaching at a bunch of different places around the city, and you have different faces you see every day, and it's so fun. You're like, oh my God, it's you. I haven't seen you since, last week, or when you were on vacation, and then you're so excited to see them again. I taught in the same place every day, 3 classes a day. So that got a little old. Not that I didn't love those students, but like, it just didn't work for me. And I knew that if and when I started my own business, I didn't want to have like a little, like, one mom and pop shop. And yet I know people who it's like they're hairdressers and like they don't want to build a team. They want to cut hair. And so like, I think there's something to knowing, figuring that out about yourself as you go. Not that you have to know it all on day one.
No.
But that being said, I always knew I was looking to have more than one location so that it would be fun and exciting, and that I'd always have something new I could start. So I knew it had to be a scalable business that couldn't be relying on me being like the star teacher at these locations. I knew I was going to have to be able to pass it on, and I was going to have to really work on my leadership skills to build that team who students would be like just as excited or more excited to have them. So one thing, there was one training that I did that really helped me with that, and I do want to mention that. It was called the Self-Expression and Leadership Program, and I did it through Landmark. I definitely recommend Landmark's programs, especially, the first one that you take when you first sign up with them is the Forum, which is something that Lululemon sends a lot of their employees to because it was a big part of their founder, Chip Wilson's background. And that's how I got into it, was from being an ambassador. And it's been huge, huge for my personal development. But the Self-Expression and Leadership Program basically was about like, you take on a project, has to be like something charitable. So at one point, the whole thing is about getting people like enrolled in your project. So it's all about like getting people excited about what you're doing, but like genuinely getting them excited about it. Not just like talking about why you think it's awesome, but getting them excited so that they see something for themselves and their own self-expression where like they want to contribute, like they feel like they have something to contribute. So eventually there's kind of like a plot twist at the end of the course where you start to really step back and hand your thing over. And a lot of people have a lot of resistance around that because let's face it, like we're humans, we want the credit, we want the glory, we want, you know, people talking about what we created. But the fact of the matter is, like, you're very limited in how much you're capable of doing if you insist on doing everything yourself and having all the credit and not sharing it. So the biggest thing I got out of that program was really learning to share the spotlight, learning to let people contribute in a way that's meaningful for them, where they can also be recognized, because now we're a team doing something, and look how much exponentially more we're getting done than if I was just running around going, me, it's the Andrea show. Like,
yeah,
I
right.
certainly wouldn't be having all these different facets going on.
Yeah, because you're creating buy-in for people, right? Like, and you are creating a brand versus a celebrity.
Absolutely. And I mean, buy-in, absolutely. And it has to be authentic for them. It's like, it's not like they're bought in because like I sold them. It's like they're bought in because they believe in it. They're like drinking the Kool-Aid. And that is the biggest advice I have with hiring is like, hire the people who are so believe in what you're doing. They're already drinking your Kool-Aid. They're so excited about it. And they have something they want to contribute. And then like, at the end of the day too, when it comes to delegating is, you know, of course you're going to be clear in what you're looking for and what your expectations are, but you have also to like be willing to give people some room to be creative and to contribute so that it's actually authentic and like fun for them, that they're really jazzed about it.
Yeah, let go of your control of everything, right? Like having, I call it micromanaging. Stop micromanaging and let it kind of go and happen for them, because that's when people get their most creative and they really buy into what you're doing, because you're letting them own a certain project in your business and it becomes their baby, which is so great. So what I love there is that you said, like, definitely figure out who you are. What kind of business do you want to run, and run it your way. Like, be your own person. Invest in the resources and the programs that are going to help you make the mindset shifts, give you the know-how and the knowledge. And then lastly, stop being a micromanager and just let it be bigger than you. So that was so wonderful. Andrea, thank you so much for spending the time with me and us this afternoon. Again, we're going to put all of Andrea's links and where you can find her in the show notes. And I really had so much fun with you this afternoon. Thank you.
I always love chatting with you. And I was just thinking about when I was telling you about that long car ride and I said, I'm going to listen to Girl Boss again. I feel like it was after a conversation with you, and you had said to me, success leaves clues. So, look at what other people are doing and see if you can figure out how they did it and what steps that they took. So, I mean, I always get so much out of our chats, and I get so many great insights out of speaking with you. So thanks so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. So thank you. We're going to sign off, and we'll see you again on the next one.